Pastor John had always known he wanted to make a difference in people's lives. He was young, only 29, yet his reputation in Willow Creek was already well established. Tall and handsome, with dark hair and a warm smile, he had the type of presence that drew people to him, not because of his wealth or appearance, but because of the kindness in his eyes and the gentleness in his heart. Though his family had left him a substantial inheritance, Pastor John never used it for his own gain. Instead, he invested in the community, buying clothes for children who needed them, helping elderly residents with medical bills, and even funding small businesses in town. He would often say, "The greatest gift we can give each other is love and support." This, more than anything, was why his church was always full. People came for the warmth, acceptance, and compassion he offered freely. Yet, despite all this, Pastor John felt that his work was only scratching the surface. He longed to help those who felt unworthy, those who believed they had no place in a church. He often prayed, asking God to show him someone who needed his help the most. One chilly afternoon, Pastor John was on his way to deliver groceries to an elderly couple in the neighborhood. On the steps of an old, crumbling building, he noticed a young woman sitting with her head bowed and her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her clothes were worn and mismatched, her hair tangled and wild, and her gaze fixed on the ground. She seemed distant, lost in her own world of pain. Without a second thought, Pastor John approached her. "Hello," he said, gently sitting down a few steps away to give her space. "My name's John. I'm the pastor at Willow Creek Church. Are you all right?" The young woman looked up, startled. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she studied him with weary eyes, clearly not used to people offering her kindness. "Why do you care?" she muttered, looking away. Pastor John smiled warmly. "Because everyone needs someone to care about them." After a long pause, she replied, "I'm Maria." Her voice was barely above a whisper, and there was a sadness in it that Pastor John couldn't ignore. He sensed that Maria carried a heavy burden, one that had left her feeling alone and unworthy. From that day on, Pastor John made a point of checking on Maria whenever he passed by the area. He learned bits and pieces about her life. She had left home at a young age, with no support and nowhere to turn. She'd done what she had to in order to survive, though those choices weighed on her, filling her with shame and regret. Each day was a struggle, and Maria had long since stopped believing in herself or in others. But Pastor John's kindness was different. He didn't push her to reveal her story, nor did he judge her. Instead, he listened. He was patient, understanding, and full of warmth, a light in the darkness she had grown used to. After months of gentle encouragement, Pastor John finally invited Maria to visit his church one Sunday. She hesitated, feeling out of place and afraid of how others might see her. "People like me don't belong in churches," she said, her voice full of doubt. Pastor John shook his head. "God's love is for everyone, Maria. There's no one too far and no one too lost." Her eyes filled with tears as she looked away. "You don't know what I've done. I don't deserve a fresh start." But Pastor John simply said, "The past is a part of your story, Maria, but it doesn't define you. You are so much more than that. Give yourself a chance to see it." Maria pondered his words, and slowly, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, change was possible. She decided to go to church, though her heart pounded with fear. She entered the church with her head down, too afraid to meet anyone's gaze. She felt out of place, like she didn't belong, and she wondered if she'd made a mistake. But Pastor John welcomed her with open arms, giving her a seat at the front where she could hear his message clearly. That day, Pastor John spoke about forgiveness and second chances. It was as if his words were meant just for her, and Maria felt something stir within her, a small flicker of hope. As Maria continued to attend services, some members of the congregation grew uneasy. They whispered about her in the hallways, speculating about her past and questioning Pastor John's decision to spend so much time with her. One Sunday, after the service, a group of older church members approached him. Pastor John, one of them, began, "We are concerned about this woman, Maria. We don't think she's the right type of person to be here. She has a history." Pastor John looked at them calmly, though he felt a pang of disappointment. "Everyone has a history," he replied. "And our church is meant to be a place for healing and acceptance. Maria has the right to be here, just like anyone else." "But she's different," another member argued, frowning. "People are talking. It doesn't look right." Pastor John's voice was gentle but firm. "Then let them talk. I would rather have a church full of broken souls seeking love and forgiveness than a church of perfect people pretending they've never made a mistake." The church members looked at him, stunned into silence. While a few were moved by his words, others weren't convinced. The gossip continued, and Maria could feel the judgment in their eyes. But each time she considered leaving, Pastor John's unwavering support reminded her that she was welcome, that she was safe. With Pastor John's guidance, Maria began to transform. She volunteered to clean the church, swept the floors, arranged the chairs, and even helped serve meals to those in need. Slowly, the congregation started to see her in a new light, as someone who genuinely wanted to change. One Sunday, Pastor John asked if anyone wanted to share their testimony. Maria felt a surge of nervousness, but something inside urged her to speak. She stood up, her hands trembling, and walked to the front of the church. "My name is Maria," she began, her voice shaking. "I've done things I'm not proud of. There were times when I felt like I was beyond saving, like I'd never be welcome in a place like this. But Pastor John saw something in me, something I couldn't see in myself. He showed me kindness when I thought I didn't deserve it. I just want to thank him and all of you for giving me a chance." The room fell silent. Some people had tears in their eyes, moved by her honesty and bravery. From that day on, Maria felt a new sense of belonging. She was no longer just a Maria with a past. She was Maria, a valued member of the church community. While Maria was gradually finding acceptance in the church, Pastor John faced opposition from an unexpected source, his family. His parents, though loving and supportive, struggled with the idea of their son growing close to someone with Maria's past. One evening, his mother invited him over for dinner, her tone serious. "John, we need to talk," she said softly as they sat down. "We are only concerned about you. You've worked so hard to build a good reputation in the community. A pastor has to be careful." Pastor John looked at his mother, understanding her worries. "Mom," he began, "I know you only want what's best for me, but Maria has changed. She's worked so hard to be a better person, and I see so much good in her." His father chimed in, "But, John, can you be sure? You've done so much for her already. Are you certain she's the one for you?" Pastor John nodded firmly. "I've prayed about this, and I believe that Maria is exactly where she's meant to be. She is kind, strong, and has a good heart. Isn't that what truly matters?" After a long conversation, his parents began to understand. Though they still had concerns, they trusted their son's judgment and decided to open their hearts to Maria. As Maria became more involved in the church, Pastor John found himself growing fonder of her. She was thoughtful, caring, and resilient. Despite her past, she possessed a strength that inspired him, and he admired how bravely she had faced her challenges. Maria, in turn, felt a deep affection for Pastor John. He had been the one person who never gave up on her, who saw her potential even when she couldn't see it herself. One evening, they were tidying up the church after a community dinner. Maria was stacking chairs when Pastor John turned to her, his eyes soft. "Thank you for everything, Maria. You've brought so much light into this place." Maria looked up, her cheeks flashing. "I should be thanking you, Pastor John. I never thought I'd find a place where I belong." They shared a quiet moment, and in that silence, something changed. They realized that their friendship had blossomed into something deeper. From that day on, they spent more time together, sharing dreams, laughing, and offering each other support in both small and significant ways. Their bond continued to grow, and soon, Pastor John and Maria decided to marry. Their wedding day was filled with laughter, tears, and celebration as the entire congregation, who once doubted her, gathered to celebrate the union of two people who had found love through faith, compassion, and understanding. After their wedding, Pastor John and Maria continued their work in Willow Creek, helping those who felt lost and unworthy, just as Maria once had. Together, they started outreach programs, offering food, shelter, and counseling to anyone in need. Their story became a symbol of hope in Willow Creek, showing that love, faith, and forgiveness could lead to transformation and new beginnings. Through this journey, Pastor John and Maria taught the town of Willow Creek a valuable lesson: no one is beyond redemption, and love can heal even the deepest wounds. Their story became a reminder to everyone that, sometimes, all a person needs is a little kindness and a chance to start anew.